And I'd like to begin with a quote from Thich Nhat Hanh, the Zen master. He said that the next Buddha, the Buddha to be, Maitreya Buddha, could come in the form of Sangha, not as an individual. So that could be what's happening. And we're waking up together, that we're creating this awakening experience through spiritual community. Certainly, I've found, and just in case you're new and don't know me, my name is Douglas Pullin, he, him pronouns. This practice isn't a solitary endeavor, even though it can look that way kind of superficially from the outside, because the sort of trademark is going inside and sitting silently in meditation. And of course, that's an important part of it. That's a crucial part of it. But that happens in a context. That happens in the context of supportive community, teachings, conditions that make that inner journey possible. And we could easily mistake it as a solitary endeavor. And that could be kind of feeding into a misunderstanding. I think back in the beginning of my journey, I was under the illusion that it was a solitary journey. And fortunately, my practice has led to waking up from that. Here's a quote from Tara Brach, who my sharing with you this morning is influenced a lot by her teaching. She has a book called True Refuge, which is a really good kind of dive into looking at the three refuges. She said, the Buddha taught that suffering arises out of feeling separate. To the degree that we identify as a separate self, we have the feeling that something is wrong with us, something is missing. We want life to be different from the way it is. There's an acute sense of separation, living inside of a contracted and isolated self. It amplifies feelings of vulnerability and fear, grasping and aversion. Feeling separate is an existential trance in which we've forgotten the wholeness of our being. So, so waking up is waking up from an existential trance. And part of being in community is just about that. So I have to admit, back when I first was introduced to these teachings, I heard about taking refuge, particularly refuge in the Sangha. And I pictured something, this was my frame of reference, which kind of dates me. I pictured something like a spiritual version of Cheers, that old TV show. I'm not sure if any of you have watched that. So, you know, it's like a cozy place where everybody knows your name. Everybody's kind, and nobody ever pushes your buttons. And I thought, well, this will be lovely. This will be peaceful. Peaceful people, peaceful me. But of course, in reality, Sangha is a little messier and it's a lot more sober. It turns out when you gather with a bunch of sincere, imperfect humans, like we all are, we're all trying to wake up together. Sometimes it can feel not so much like a Dharma center and like a family reunion. heartwarming, sometimes awkward, but deeply nourishing if we stick around, if we stay with it. And so, yeah, that's been my experience. And just in case you're new to Buddhist teachings, there is something that's kind of universal across all of Buddhist traditions. It's called the three refuges, or the three jewels, which is the Buddha, which is the historical Siddhartha Gautama Buddha, the one who woke up and shared these teachings. And it's also the seeds of awakening that are in each of our hearts. The second refuge is the Dharma, which is the teachings, the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, and the direct experience of the truth that we discover from meditation. And then the Sangha, the lineage of practice that goes back 2,600 years to the time of the Buddha, that's been passed on. Those who've practiced well, and in current time, the community that gathers us. This is Sangha. And so we're invited to explore what it means to take refuge. And it's understood in this tradition that these aren't abstract ideals. They're actually living, breathing sources of support that make a huge difference. And it's often helpful in the beginning to just acknowledge and recognize where we tend to already turn, maybe reflexively or unconsciously, for safety and support. Sometimes we take refuge in busyness, perfectionism, control, money, power, sense pleasure, screens. Screens are a big one. So what if instead we could turn towards something that's that actually meets the need, that isn't sort of a distraction or a kind of it's kind of like you can't really get enough of what you don't really need. And something that really actually feeds our soul, that actually meets the deeper spiritual need. Joseph Goldstein, senior Western Insight meditation teacher, said, in their deeper meaning, the refuges always point back to our own actions and our mind states. What we are seeking is within us. So there's that. And then Tara Brach echoes, we find true refuge whenever our hearts open with tenderness and love, whenever we connect with the innate clarity and intelligence, which is our true nature. So that's the invitation. So let's just pause here for a moment and just reflect on those words. So our focus for this morning is in celebrating Sangha, reflecting on this refuge, this living, breathing community of practice. Back in the Buddhist time, Sangha referred to the monastic community. But today it's really understood in a much more expansive and inclusive way to include our spiritual friends, our teachers. Sangha is basically anywhere we feel supported on the path. And it reminds us that we don't have to do this alone, that we're in this together. Thich Nhat Hanh writes, when a community lives in harmony, their Sangha is holy. The art of Sangha building is the most important work we can do. And it isn't a one-time thing. It isn't like, whoa, okay, I took the precepts and then I did the refuge ceremony and then it's one and done. It's like breath, it's like metta, it's like ethical conduct. We return to it over and over again, forgetting, remembering, starting again. And it gradually deepens. We feel a part of something bigger. When those times in life come when there's huge changes, when the earth feels like it's shaking beneath our feet, we can still trust that we have a true home, a true spiritual home to come back to. That actually never left, that it's always here. And there's a tendency in Western inside meditation practice, like we do here at PIMC, to focus a lot on the Buddha and Dharma aspect of the teachings, which is wonderful, beautiful. We love a good sutta, or some of us like neuroscience and integrating neuroscience into this practice. And some of us have been known to get excited about brain scans the way others get excited about chocolate cake. But Sangha, the living field of practice that we do together, sometimes gets less attention. It's like fish swimming in the ocean, forget about the ocean. And it's important to remember the ocean aspect of things. It's what connects us. So yeah, what sustains our practice? What holds us when life is difficult? What keeps us coming back when we want to give up? In my experience, it's spiritual friends. It's community. It's relationship. That's certainly been true for me. So I think if we are serious about practice, if we want to deepen practice, if we want to sustain practice, then Sangha isn't a luxury. It's a necessity. It's like the fish in the ocean couldn't survive without the ocean. So not to say that a part of spiritual maturity is learning to stand on our own 2 feet. That's a part of it. We take full responsibility for these minds and these bodies and what they do and what they say. And that's really important. That's a key. But that doesn't mean we have to do that alone. We're independent and we're also interdependent. Both are true. Yeah, there's a jewel in each of us that's precious. And it's the inner Sangha the inner capacity to be in relationship with life in a way that reflects wisdom, compassion, kindness. And I sometimes picture myself when things are challenging or difficult as a chunk of ore from a gold mine. And there's beauty and value inside, but it needs some refinement. So being in a Sangha is like being in a rock tumbler. Uh, Jim, you might remember this back probably 15 or 20 years ago. We had a guest teacher from Green Gulch Farm that visited PIMC. Do you remember that? And she described living together in that spiritual community down in outside of the Bay Area. She described it as being in a rock tumbler, gently polished, maybe sometimes not so gently, by the patient presence of others until the gold begins to shine, until it comes through. It's there. The rough edges of the rock gently get worn away, and we learn how to be in relationship with each other. And that isn't something that we are taught a lot about in this community or in this culture. This culture, we have struggles with community. There's lots of polarization. There's lots of othering. There's lots of feeding negative biases. And so this is very different, the direction we're swimming in this. There's a beautiful story in the early Buddhist texts, the Sumaitita Nakia. One day, Ananda, the Buddha's close attendant and cousin, approached the Buddha with a realization. He said, I think that spiritual friendship, spiritual companionship, and spiritual intimacy are half of the spiritual life. And Ananda was always kind of the straight man for the Buddha, who gave him an opportunity to expand on. The Buddha looked at him and said, with kindness, not so, Ananda. Spiritual friendship is the whole of the spiritual life. Kalyanamita, spiritual friendship. And it's often traditionally seen as in terms of a teacher-student relationship, what's called a vertical friendship between a student and teacher. And having a wise guide can be a precious thing. But it's also important, just as important, to have what's referred to as horizontal relationships with peers. And so this dimension is often overlooked, but it's precious, it's important. So, and over the course of time, I've been in many different Kalyanamitas, spiritual friendship groups, and it's been incredibly rich and important for me. Spiritual friends can see things that we miss in ourselves. Sometimes we act in ways that contradict our deepest intentions, and we don't see or don't want to see. Or a good friend can reflect back to us with kindness what's going on. They don't let us off the hook, but they don't judge us. They choose their words carefully, guided by compassion. So there's this is precious, this opportunity. Friends receive our confessions, they rejoice in our virtues, They remind us of our goodness. That's really important. A lot of us are really hard on ourselves. So we need to be reminded and have this reflected back to us. Back in one of the first retreats I did with Ruth Dennison, who's one of our main benefactors here in establishing the center back many years ago. She came up to me. I was doing a walking meditation on a retreat, and just out of the blue, she came up to me and said, Douglas, you need to love yourself more. And obviously, there was something reflected in my body posture, or maybe it was the frown on my face, or perhaps it was stooped posture or whatever. But she was right. And that was for me one of the early sort of awakenings to the power of the importance of being seen, to see that potential. So our friends listen deeply, they observe. There's a wonderful poem. I don't have time to read all of it today, but it's called When Someone Deeply Listens to You. And here's the essence of it. When someone deeply listens to you, your bare feet are on the earth. And the beloved land that seemed distant in you is suddenly very clear. It's like it's precious. So one of the deepest insights in Dharma practice, it seems to me, is that our sense of separation of self and other, inside and outside, isn't ultimately true. It's something that we learn to construct. As infants, we don't distinguish between ourselves and the world. That boundary is built over time. And it's absolutely necessary for us to function in the world. But it gets exaggerated and it creates an illusion of separateness, the root of our suffering. So spiritual practice gently, gradually helps us see through that illusion. We absolutely need to become healthy individuals with appropriate boundaries and all of that. And we also need to move beyond self-centeredness. And to recognize the truth, which is our neighbors are ourselves, that we're in this together. And that isn't just a nice idea. It's a practice, and it's possible that our survival depends on it, really, to wake up to that. When we put, we start to think of other people's needs as important as ours. And I think that's part of what the Buddha meant when he said friendship is the whole of the spiritual life. It's that realization of non-separation. It gives us a real living context in which to practice. It grounds our meditation. There is a caution here, though, as I'm talking about non-separation and giving to others. Transcending self-preoccupation is important in spiritual community, but it's also important to be mindful of how we show up for others. I've seen many people conditioned by family, culture, gender roles to give in ways that ignore their own needs, leading to exhaustion, burnout, resentment. I've seen lots of people come and go with lots of really positive energy, but it consumes them sometimes. So true refuge in Sangha doesn't ask us to lose ourselves. Rather, it invites us into a space where compassion includes everyone, including ourselves. So for some, learning self-compassion in relationship might be the first courageous step to healthier, more balanced connections. And I remember a dear friend in the Sangha many years ago who was always the first to volunteer, bringing meals to the sick, cleaning up after events, offering to listen to people who were in pain. Incredible, incredible generosity. And after a while, I noticed that she seemed worn down, even a little withdrawn. One day, she shared with me that she was afraid to say no, afraid to let other people down. And as we talked, tears welled up in her eyes when she realized she hadn't been offering from a full heart, but from a sense of obligation. It's an old habit there. So important to pay attention to that. So yes, it's about giving, but there's balance there. Making sure that we're doing it from a place of fullness, giving, like Marshall Rosenberg, the founder of nonviolent communication, giving with the same enthusiasm that a child feeds a hungry duck. There's that kind of excitement, that kind of, so. And I'd like to suggest that perhaps the real measure of spiritual community isn't the size of the building. We're fortunate to have this wonderful space, or the number of programs, but whether there's true friendship that's happening. And what is true friendship in the context of Kalyanamita, spiritual relationship? It's always inclusive. It's never exclusive. It always includes the willingness to welcome someone new, to widen the circle, to offer refuge, to walk together. So that's what we're trying to do here at PIMC. And of course, we'll do it, imperfectly, and we'll hopefully mindfully learn from our process. But it's a beautiful thing. And through the Sangha, the Dharma can live on as something more than a body of texts or an institution. It's about us. It's about connection. Once again, just an invitation to pause, just reflect, maybe be here with a mindful breath. So Sangha is the context where the path becomes embodied. It moves from a conceptual frame into a direct experiential frame in our relationships with each other. It's where the Eightfold Path comes to life. When we practice with each other, we can see right speech in action, and that we speak honestly and kindly, how we listen with presence. We can see skillful action in how we care for each other, support each other during difficulties, show up with integrity. We can witness effort, just the effort of everyone showing up here today on a warm Sunday in July. It's like, that's effort to really appreciate that, to appreciate each other, uh, and to be reminded again and again of our aspiration, our own aspiration, the aspiration of others, that skillful intention to live with kindness and compassion. There's a teacher in from London originally, Tanitsara, who speaks so beautifully about this. She started out practicing in the Ubakhin tradition, which is our root tradition here at PIMC back in 1975. And then she ordained under Ajahn Chah and spent 12 years as a Buddhist nun, and was a founding member of the Chithurst Monastery and Amravati Monastery in the UK. And she wrote, Sangha isn't only about a refuge, but it's also a crucible. It holds us when we burn away what no longer serves. It reflects our shadow and our light. In community, we come to know who we are and who we're becoming. That's such a powerful image for me. Not just comfort, but transformation. Yeah, there's accountability, there's reflection, there's patience. That's the kind of environment where the Eightfold Path can truly ripen. We can truly experience it. Another wonderful teacher, Joanna Macy, who's a Buddhist scholar and activist, echoes this. She said, the most radical thing any of us can do at this time is to be fully present to what's happening in the world. And to do that, we need each other. We need practices, and most importantly, we need community in order to be strong in these really difficult times. She also said, you are not a separate being, you belong to the living body of the earth. You are the earth. Looking up at the stars, you are the earth becoming conscious of itself. And I want to mention beloved Joanna Macy is in a hospice as I speak, as far as I know. She, there on the website, was posted this announcement. We want you to all know that that Joanna Macy, our beloved root teacher, is now on home hospice. She's being lovingly cared for by her children, grandchildren, and a few dear friends. A couple of weeks ago, she fell at home and broke her hip. After undergoing surgery and spending over a week in the hospital, she returned home to recover. Just 2 days later, she developed pneumonia. And with her characteristic clarity and courage, expressed her wish to remain at home, surrounded by love. Her care team shifted to hospice, and then since then, Joanna has been gently letting go. In this bittersweet moment, we hold many things at once, both deep gratitude for her life, sorrow at her impending departure, and awe at the grace and presence she brings even now. One friend shared, Joanna truly loves every drop of life. And Joanna was here in Portland back a few years ago. And back many years ago, I had a chance to be on a retreat with Joanna. It was a powerful, powerful process. So anyway, just holding compassionate wishes for a peaceful passing for her. So I'd like to wrap things up here with a few reflections to kind of summarize what I'm suggesting. Um, so first, Sangha is a mirror. When we sit alone, it's easy to imagine we're very kind, very awake, but in community, we are reflected back to ourselves. Our rough edges show, our hidden strengths are seen. Others can see our Buddha nature even when we don't. So that's true. And then there's this piece from Ram Dass, who once said, "So you think you're enlightened? Try going home for Thanksgiving." And I've updated that for modern audiences. Try sitting silently next to your uncle while he explains cryptocurrency for the third year in a row. That'll test your equanimity. It happens, yeah. So the second thing is Sangha is a refuge. The world can feel harsh, noisy, fragmented. To have a space where people are committed to mindfulness, compassion, and deep listening is precious. It's rare. So when we're suffering, it is often the gentle presence of another person who sees us, even in silence. Something changes when we hold space together. It's healing. It's transformative. It's mysterious. The third is Sangha gives us strength. When our motivation wanes, when our life gets busy, Sangha can carry us. We can ride the momentums of others' practice, their sincerity, their discipline. I often think of Sangha like a flock of geese in flight. The ones in front break the wind. And when they tire, they fall back and let the others take a lead. And we could take turns to be strong. And more than ever, that's happening here in this community as we've transitioned out of a teacher-centric model into a Sangha-led community. So that's what's happening. And like geese, occasionally one of us honks too loudly, but that's part of the charm. That's part of the invitation to acceptance and expand. So, and finally, my reflection on Sangha. Sangha helps us belong in a society that's marked by separation, isolation, marginalization. Sangha offers us belonging, and it's not based on any status or identity, but on shared aspiration. It's the aspiration to awaken together, to be free, to live with compassion. And we, more than ever, we need spaces where we can be real, where we can cry, we can laugh, we can stumble, we can shine. That's this. That's what this is for.